Most seniors don't realize this, but sitting, packaged food, and isolation are quietly aging them faster than disease. You won't feel it today. You'll feel it when you can't stand up tomorrow. In my decades practicing medicine, I've seen something deeply troubling. Not sudden illness, not dramatic diagnoses, but a slow, quiet unraveling. People who did everything right, took their pills, followed advice, stayed comfortable, and still lost their strength, their independence, their spark. And it always begins the same way: comfort. There was a remarkable physician in Japan, Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara, who lived past 100 and worked until the very end. He believed something that modern medicine has almost completely forgotten. Aging well does not happen by accident. It requires intentional living, deliberate friction, daily effort. He warned that the moment we design our lives around ease, the body begins to quietly shut down. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes to say out loud. Modern life was not designed for longevity. It was designed for convenience. And after 60, that convenience becomes dangerous. We assume the goal of aging is to make life easier. Softer chairs, faster meals, less movement, fewer reasons to get up. But biologically, that's exactly backward. I want you to picture your body not as a machine that needs rest, but as a classic engine. An old, beautifully engineered engine. It doesn't survive by sitting idle. It survives through regular movement, clean fuel, and human attention. Automation ruins it. Neglect destroys it. And this isn't just philosophy. We see this truth echoed in modern research on long-lived populations. Dan Bietner, who studied the longest living cultures on Earth, found something striking. These people did not rely on convenience. They didn't work out to compensate for sitting all day. They didn't microwave their meals. They didn't live in isolation. Movement was built into their days. Meals were simple and real. Human connection was non-negotiable. Now here's the part that should concern you. The things destroying aging bodies today don't cause immediate pain. They don't trigger alarms. They don't send you to the emergency room. Sitting too much, packaged food, living alone, quietly, day after day. These habits don't hurt fast. They drain you slowly. They siphon strength from your legs. They dull your metabolism. They steal your sense of purpose without asking permission. And by the time frailty shows up, weakness, falls, exhaustion, we call it normal aging. But it's not. Frailty does not begin with disease. It begins with comfort. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the everyday habits that are aging you faster than you realize, and more importantly, the specific daily corrections that can reverse that process. Not supplements, not miracle products, but deliberate actions your body still responds to even now. Before we go any further, I want you to pause for just a moment and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I read every single comment, and it helps me understand who I'm speaking to. Now let's talk about the first silent destroyer, one that most people still underestimate. There's a strange belief that has taken hold in modern aging. As long as there's a short walk in the morning, the rest of the day somehow doesn't count. 20 minutes of movement, 8 hours of sitting. On paper, that looks responsible. Biologically, it's catastrophic. What actually happens inside the body after 60 is far more unforgiving than most people realize. Prolonged sitting sends a signal of shutdown, not rest, shutdown. When the legs stay still for long periods, a transport system called GLUT4 begins to power down. This system is responsible for pulling sugar out of the bloodstream and into muscle cells where it can be used as energy. When it slows, sugar stays in the blood, insulin rises, and muscles stop receiving fuel. At the same time, leg muscles, the largest muscles in the body, go quiet. And when large muscles go quiet, the entire metabolic engine downshifts. Lymphatic flow slows, waste products linger, inflammation quietly builds. After 60, there's another layer most people never hear about. Muscle protein synthesis, the process that repairs and rebuilds muscle, drops sharply unless muscles are activated frequently. Not intensely, frequently. Think of muscle like a rechargeable battery. It doesn't just lose charge when it's used too much. It loses charge when it's left idle. Leave it unused long enough and it stops holding energy altogether. This is why someone can appear active and still weaken year after year. I remember a man, Bill, 74, who did what he was told. A daily walk, rain or shine, but the rest of his day was spent sitting, reading, watching television, long meals at the table, long evenings in the chair. Every year his legs grew smaller. His balance worsened, not because he wasn't exercising, but because the silence between movements was too long. The body doesn't measure health in workouts. It measures it in signals. Long, uninterrupted sitting sends a very clear signal: conserve, shrink, shut down. Short, repeated movement sends a different message entirely. It tells the body that tissue is still needed, that strength still matters, that independence is still required. What's striking is how little movement is needed to change that message. Brief periods of standing, short bursts of leg engagement, repeated reminders throughout the day that the lower body is still in use. Even watching television becomes a different biological experience when the body isn't folded into a chair the entire time. The legs remain awake, blood moves, muscles remember their job. This isn't about intensity, it's about interruption. Interrupting the long stretches of stillness that quietly convince the body it's no longer needed. And if sitting is the first silent accelerator of aging, the next one hides in plain sight. In the freezer, the pantry, and the brightly labeled packages designed for seniors. There's a quiet shift that happens in many households after 60. Cooking feels optional. Packaging feels practical. Labels promise safety, balance, and heart health. Everything looks reasonable. And yet, something very specific begins to unravel inside the body. Ultra-processed foods, frozen dinners, protein bars, shelf-stable meals interact with an aging metabolism very differently than they do in youth. The problem isn't calories, it's signaling. These foods digest fast, hit the bloodstream hard, and leave just as quickly. Blood sugar rises sharply, insulin follows, inflammatory pathways are activated, and muscle tissue, the very tissue that protects independence, receives less usable nutrition than expected. There's a second issue that almost no one talks about. As digestion ages, the gut becomes less tolerant of additives, emulsifiers, stabilizers, artificial fibers. These compounds disrupt the gut lining and interfere with amino acid absorption. Protein may be present on the label, but less of it reaches muscle cells where it's needed. The body is being fed, but not nourished. Imagine fueling that classic engine with something already broken down. Pre-chewed fuel. Easy to pour in, but incapable of generating real power. The engine runs, but it never performs. Over time, parts begin to fail, not dramatically, but persistently. This is why people like Joan, 69, experience something that feels deeply unfair. She eats less than she did in her 50s. Portions are smaller, meals are lighter, and yet fat accumulates while strength disappears. That's not aging. That's metabolic confusion. When meals lack real structure, real protein, real fiber, real fat, the body shifts into storage mode. Muscle becomes optional, fat becomes insurance, energy drops, recovery slows. What's remarkable is how differently the body responds when food resembles food again. Meals built around a clear protein source, a vegetable and a natural fat, send a very different message. Fewer ingredients mean fewer metabolic questions. The digestive system recognizes the input. Muscle tissue receives what it can actually use: eggs, fish, beans, vegetables, olive oil. Simple combinations, repeated consistently, calm inflammation rather than provoke it. They support muscle maintenance instead of undermining it. And while food shapes the internal environment, there's another force that shapes the body just as powerfully, one that never appears on nutrition labels or fitness plans. It's invisible, it's quiet, and it weakens the body from the inside out. Loneliness. Loneliness is often spoken about gently, almost politely, as if it were a mood, a phase, something that belongs in conversations about feelings, not physiology. But inside the aging body, loneliness behaves like a chronic stressor. When social contact fades, the nervous system interprets it as a threat. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, rises and stays elevated longer than it once did. After 60, the body clears stress hormones more slowly, which means their effects linger. And cortisol is not neutral. It breaks things down. It suppresses immune response, it interferes with sleep architecture, and most importantly for aging bodies, it accelerates muscle loss. Muscle tissue becomes a source of emergency fuel in a body that believes it is under constant pressure. This is why isolation doesn't just feel heavy, it becomes physically visible over time. Shoulders round, steps shorten, energy narrows. Humans were never designed to age alone. Think of people like a campfire. One flame on its own flickers and fades. Flames placed together burn warmer, longer, and more steadily. The biology of that metaphor is real. Social interaction stabilizes hormones, improves glucose regulation, and preserves neuromuscular function. Arthur, 77, illustrates this quietly. His meals were adequate, his medical numbers acceptable, but he lived alone, days passing with little conversation. Over time, he weakened faster than others his age who shared meals, walks, and stories, even when their diets and activity levels were similar. Isolation amplifies decline. What's often misunderstood is that connection doesn't need to be dramatic to be biologically meaningful. Regular presence, predictable interaction, shared routines. These stabilize the nervous system and reduce the catabolic stress response that erodes tissue. A walk taken alongside another person changes breathing patterns. Our shared meal alters digestion. A weekly gathering gives the brain something to anticipate, structure, not stimulation. And this leads to something important. Even when movement and nutrition are addressed, the body struggles to thrive without meaning, without rhythm, without a reason to stay engaged. Which brings us to the most powerful restorative principle of all, not something new, but something deeply old. A return to the original human blueprint. There's a moment in later life when many people start looking outward for solutions. New pills, new protocols, new promises, as if aging were a software problem waiting for an update. But the body doesn't age because it lacks innovation. It ages because it drifts away from its original design. For most of human history, life demanded participation. Bodies moved because survival required it. Meals were prepared because food did not arrive pre-made. People gathered because isolation was dangerous. None of this was called healthy living. It was simply living. When these patterns disappear, the body interprets it as the end of usefulness. Inflammation rises, muscle disappears, brain function dulls. Not because of age itself, but because the signals that once maintained structure are gone. Consistent movement, especially the kind woven into daily tasks, keeps joints lubricated and muscles responsive. Whole foods reduce the inflammatory noise that confuses metabolism and accelerates decline. Purpose, even quiet purpose, stabilizes the nervous system and preserves cognitive resilience. Together, these elements do something profound. They reduce the background stress that ages tissue. Think of longevity not as an upgrade, but as a return to factory settings. The body remembers how it was meant to function. When patterns align with that memory, repair mechanisms re-engage. Rosa, 81, demonstrates this beautifully. Her days aren't extraordinary. She cooks simply. She walks as part of her routine. She remains socially engaged in predictable ways. No extremes, no obsession, and yet her posture is upright. Her mind is clear. Her energy is steady. What she has rebuilt isn't youth, it's coherence. Daily non-exercise movement keeps the body integrated rather than fragmented. Cooking real meals reinforces rhythm and agency. Regular social anchors create anticipation and emotional stability. These patterns work together. Remove one, and the others strain. Restore all three, and the system stabilizes. This is what modern life slowly erodes. Not strength alone, but structure. And structure is what aging bodies depend on most. Which brings us back to where we began, to the wisdom that has quietly endured long before convenience arrived. The understanding that how one lives each ordinary day determines how the body ages, and that comfort, when left unchallenged, becomes something else entirely. There was something, Doctor. Shigeaki Hinohara understood that modern systems quietly ignore. He believed aging was not something that simply happened to the body. It was something shaped, negotiated, and guided by how a person lived each ordinary day. Not through grand interventions, but through repeated signals sent to the body about whether it was still needed. He warned that when life becomes too comfortable, the body misinterprets that comfort as irrelevance. This is where many older adults find themselves today. Not sick, not broken, but slowly disengaged. Life has been streamlined. Chairs replace movement, packaged food replaces preparation, screens replace faces. None of this feels dangerous in the moment. In fact, it feels like relief. But biologically, relief can be misleading. The aging body does not thrive on ease. It thrives on participation. It expects to be used, challenged gently, fed simply, and woven into human rhythm. When those expectations are no longer met, systems begin to downregulate. Muscles soften, metabolism narrows, stress hormones linger longer than they should. The brain receives fewer signals that tomorrow requires readiness. This is why frailty feels so sudden when it finally appears. It is not sudden at all. It is the end result of years of quiet withdrawal from life's demands. Inohara spoke often about responsibility, not in a moral sense but a biological one, the responsibility to remain engaged with the world, even when the world makes disengagement easy. He believed that staying upright, curious, and socially involved was not optional for longevity. It was foundational. What modern research later confirmed is that he was right. When Dan Buettner studied the longest living populations on Earth, he didn't find obsession with health. He found structure. Lives built in a way that required movement without exercise, meals without marketing, and connection without scheduling apps. People aged well because their environment never let them fully disengage. Modern life does the opposite. It removes friction everywhere it can. And while that feels humane, it creates a body that receives fewer and fewer reasons to maintain strength. This is not about rejecting modernity. It is about understanding its effects. Comfort is not the enemy. Passive comfort is. A chair is useful, but hours of stillness tell the legs they are optional. Convenience food is practical. But repeated reliance teaches the metabolism to expect chaos rather than rhythm. Solitude can be peaceful, but chronic isolation activates stress responses that quietly dismantle the body. None of these forces act alone. They compound. And over time, they rewrite what the body believes the future requires. The hopeful truth, the one that rarely gets said, is that the body continues listening well into old age. It does not stop adapting at 60 or 70 or even 80. It simply adapts to what it is given. When daily life includes regular movement woven into routine, the body invests in muscle. When food is simple and recognizable, inflammation calms and digestion stabilizes. When social contact is predictable, stress hormones soften their grip. The nervous system settles, sleep deepens, energy becomes steadier. These changes do not require intensity, they require consistency. This is why deliberate living matters so deeply after 60, not because time is short, but because the signals matter more. Small acts repeated daily carry more biological weight than occasional effort. Inohara once suggested that comfort, when left unquestioned, becomes a soft bed that slowly turns into a cage. It doesn't lock suddenly. It closes quietly, one routine at a time. But cages can be opened, not through force, through awareness, through small repeated choices that tell the body it is still participating in life, rather than observing it.